Good evening, this is Lantern Glow Stories. Tonight's tale lingers near an entrance where arrivals were once expected, and a single chair remembers who always came home. Settle in and let the lantern glow guide you into the night. The chair stood by the front door of the Harris house, slightly angled, its wooden legs worn smooth by years of use. No one remembered exactly when it had been placed there. It had simply always been. The Harris family joked that it belonged to the house itself, a quiet observer of comings and goings, watching coats be shrugged off, keys dropped into bowls, shoes kicked aside in a familiar rush. For decades, someone had sat in that chair every evening. When Margaret Harris returned to the house after the funeral, the chair was still there. Her mother was gone now, and the house felt larger than it should have, as though rooms had stretched in her absence. Margaret set her suitcase down near the door and paused. The chair faced inward, toward the hallway, as if waiting. Growing up, Margaret had never questioned the chair. Her mother, Ellen, used it every evening around dusk. She would sit there quietly, hands folded in her lap, eyes on the door. Sometimes she hummed, sometimes she didn't. Margaret had once asked who she was waiting for. "Just listening," her mother had said. "This house tells you things if you let it." After unpacking, Margaret wandered through the familiar rooms. Everything was as she remembered. The clock in the living room still ran a minute slow. The hallway light still flickered before settling. But the chair by the door felt different now, heavier. That evening, as daylight softened into amber, Margaret found herself drawn back to the entryway. Without thinking, she sat down in the chair. The wood was cool beneath her palms. From that spot, she could see the door clearly, the worn threshold, the faint scratch near the handle, from the day her brother had tried to carry in a bicycle without turning it sideways. Her brother, Daniel. Daniel had left the house years ago, long before their mother's health began to fade. There had been words said too sharply, doors closed too hard. He had promised to visit. He hadn't. Margaret shifted in the chair, a familiar ache settling quietly in her chest. As night fell, the house creaked softly around her. Then, just past dusk, the front door handle moved. Not turned, not opened, just moved. Margaret sat very still. The sound was gentle, almost cautious, as though someone had reached for the door and thought better of it. The chair beneath her seemed to warm slightly. Margaret stood and crossed the room, placing her hand on the door. No one stood outside. The porch was empty, the street quiet. She closed the door and returned to the chair. "I know," she said softly, unsure who she was speaking to. The chair creaked faintly beneath her weight. Later that night, Margaret noticed something she had never seen before. Carved into the back leg of the chair, faded and shallow, were two sets of initials. E.H. and D.H., her mother, her brother. Daniel must have carved them long ago, during one of those evenings when waiting stretched on and no one knew what to say. The next morning, Margaret woke early. Sunlight filtered through the entryway window, falling directly across the chair. Beside it lay a folded envelope on the floor. No stamp, no address. Inside was a single line, written in familiar handwriting. "I sat there longer than you think." Margaret smiled, a small and steady smile. Before leaving the house, she moved the chair slightly, not away from the door, just closer. Somewhere, a place of waiting became a place of return. And so tonight's gentle mystery rests quietly by the doorway. A chair, a pause, and a home that never stops listening. Thank you for listening. Until our next story, Beneath the Lantern Light.